Hi. I posted something the other day about the reactions to Shepherds for Sale by Megan Basham and thought, okay, if I'm going to do something like that and it got a little bit of attention, I would want to put up what I actually think about it myself. And so I read the book, finished it last week sometime, and wanted to take the time to offer kind of my thoughts on it. In a lot of ways, it wasn't the bombshell that I thought it would be. And I don't think it is a bombshell if you've been paying attention. I wasn't surprised when, I read about J.D. Greer or Russell Moore or, Ed Stetzer, Christianity Today, and how they're not holding a line on orthodoxy on so many different areas. You know, the mess that I've seen on X or Twitter, stuff like Gavin Ortland and his responses to the book and being named in it, some of them aren't necessarily upset about the people that are named in it. Many of them aren't even named in it. But I'm afraid, I think what so many of them are upset about is that the curtain is kind of being pulled back on how they were duped by these other people that are named, how they were sucked into, and maybe still are sucked into the things that have been promoted from these other people, the names that she names, the folks that have bought into the, as she puts it, the leftist ideologies, the sinful, unrighteous takes on stuff like CRT and abortion and LGBTQ issues. And she mentions, a pastor who hadn't read Christianity Today in many years, who picked up a copy and was like, what is going on? And I can see where, if that's you, if you haven't been aware of these things, you would be surprised. This would be a bombshell. But if you have been paying attention, I don't know how you'd feel that way. These people have really made their allegiances known. What I will say is, Patrick Miller wrote an article saying he was concerned that people's trust would be eroded in their local pastors. Specifically, he wrote that good churches and good pastors would suffer because of this. Then he says, at the end of this, the conclusion that he makes and the exhortation he gives is, good people, or excuse me, remind your people that this book isn't about your church. The problem is, what if it is? I don't believe that there's this, massive trickle down of Soros money coming to all these different pastors who have embraced some of these different ideologies. But, each chapter in this book contains what I would call like the little guy story. It's the story of somebody who is pretty typical, who's in their church, who one day starts to hear something and they're going, man, this just doesn't sound right. And then come to find out their church has been infected by some of these ideologies. And I think that's the real alarm that this book sounds, is that pastors are being influenced. They are being influenced by the Russell Moore's Christianity Today, the ERLC. And as a result, I think somewhat unwittingly, many people have been sucked into these things. And so when it's being called out, when the alarm is being sounded, maybe they're ashamed, maybe they're afraid, maybe they still don't see how they're being sucked into all this. At my church, we're really insulated from this. We're not an SBC church. We're not part of a synod. We're not part of a association. And so we get to be kind of on the outside looking into all these things. I think that gives us a little bit more. There's definitely cost associated with that in terms of things that we're on the outside of. But there's a lot of benefit in that we get to look from the outside in and have a little bit more objectivity to the stuff that we see happening. So I wasn't surprised at the content. I was surprised sometimes at the extent and the depth and the organization to so much of the influence that's being exercised, the orchestrated labor to purchase, and many times purchase, the allegiance of the, conservative Bible bloc. And I think the church is so often naive as to what our opposition looks like, to what the opposition to truth is. And this is probably one of the great values of the book, is it's calling to account those who have willfully surrendered to these influences, and putting it in such a public and definable way that, when somebody's just posting on X, somebody's just putting out things about, hey, so and so's compromised, so and so has been, overtaken because of their desire for acceptance from the world, desire for acceptance among, the cultural elites. That can get forgotten in 5 minutes, like so many other things in our time do. But putting it in a book, it gives a little bit more weight to it, gives a little bit more notice that I think is demanded by it. Most of the guys, this is true, I've seen this a few times, most of the guys named in here, they're not shepherds, but they influence them. And that's the significant issue in my mind. That's the real big takeaway for me. The lesson here is, don't be this. Don't sell out. Don't get courted by worldly favor to such a degree that you become a shill for the world and its agenda that is patently antithetical to righteousness. Instead, preach the word. That's the pastoral mandate, that we would be heralds of the Lord and not of some other agenda.